All right, guys, so I'm officially 25 pounds up, and I just want to show you a leg day workout and some exercises that help me grow a bigger and rounder lower area, aka butt. First, we're starting off with hip thrusts. By now, everyone should know this is like the #1 key exercise to grow your glutes. I saw the biggest and most difference when I started doing these like 3 years ago, so I'm super grateful for them. Always start out with them. And obviously, if you are trying to gain weight, you are going to make sure, one, you are eating a lot, and two, you have to at some point start lifting heavy. The first like year and a half, I lifted the same weight and my glutes got bigger, but if you want to see a big difference, you have to eat as well as lift heavy. So I usually do a couple of warm-up sets with 25 on each side, and I shoot for 10 reps, obviously, just focusing on form, making sure the movement's right. After that, I go up in weight. I'll put another 25 plate on each side, and then I usually end with 3 plates on each side. So now we're going up in weight, and with these next sets, I just want to make sure that I'm working on my form, going slow and controlled, and just making sure I'm feeling it mostly in my glutes. So I personally feel like the main way to feel it in your glutes is to make sure your feet placement is correct. You want your knees at a 90-degree angle and aligned with your ankles. I feel like when your feet are too far back, you start to feel it in your knees, and that hurts. And I feel like when they're too far forward, you feel it in your quads or your back starts to hurt. So just make sure your knees are at a 90-degree angle, and I feel like that helps everything. By the time you're done, you should be feeling it in your glutes more than anything. Another way I ensure that I'm using my glutes is to brace my core and literally use my butt to push the weight up. So if I could give you any tips when it comes to doing hip thrusts, it would be to have your knees at a 90-degree angle, brace your core, keep your chin tucked, and literally use your glutes to push that weight up. And obviously, progressive overload and lifting heavy is key when you want to grow your glutes, but also do not go up in weight until your form is perfected and the weight you're doing is just too easy. So we're about to get into our last set. And with hip thrusts, I usually shoot for 4 to 5 sets, 8 to 10 reps. And once you can easily do 10 reps, it's probably time to go up in weight. But yeah, hip thrusts or glute bridges, so great for glute growth. And yeah, those are my #1 exercise. So next, we are going to be doing deadlifts with the trap bar or hex bar. So I always wanted to try deadlifts with the trap bar, but I was just too scared. And finally, my last trainer showed me how to do them. And honestly, there was nothing to be scared of. It's super easy, even the setup. But this is honestly the only way I can do deadlifts and feel them literally only in my glutes with no type of back pain. So if you're someone that wants to do deadlifts or RDLs, but you are too scared, I highly recommend using the trap bar. And also, doing deadlifts after your hip thrust, I feel like is key to having the most amazing glute burn. And I just like to do those 2 super heavy and get them out of the way. Then we're going to do some lying leg curls. I feel like these are all around just a great leg exercise. They primarily target the hammies, but you do feel glute activation when you kick up. So I like to do these. And if I'm not doing these, I'm doing seated leg curls, or I'm supersetting them with the leg extension machine, which I usually do on my quads and hammy day. I have 2 leg days, one where we primarily focus on glutes, and then the other where we focus on quads and hammy. And still a little bit of glutes because I want to round buttocks. I used to hate this machine because if it's not adjusted properly, it could be a pain. So make sure you take your time and figure out how to adjust it correctly for your body and your height with no weight. And once it's adjusted correctly or properly, I feel like you are good to go and you feel it exactly where you need to. And I just shoot for 4 sets, 8 to 10 reps, increasing the weight as I go up. With most of all exercises, except for hip thrusts, I'm usually only doing 4 sets, like I said, 8 to 10 reps, increasing the weight always. And then hip thrust is the one where I might do 5 sets or 1 extra heavy just because I am trying to grow these glutes as much as I can. Next, we are going to be going into the most non-fun exercise, but one where I've really started to see a difference. So these are split squats. And one thing I can say about split squats is they are humbling, but they will also double the size of your glutes. So when starting out with these, don't be afraid to use little to no weight. When I first started, my first 2 sets would be with no weight just to make sure I had the movement correct and I could feel it where I needed to feel it. So there's 2 ways to do these. You can do them where you feel them mainly in your quads, but if you want these to be more glute focused, you can just slightly lean forward and you'll feel it more in your glutes. I like to do these closer to the end because with your leg day and with most workouts, you want to make sure they're structured correctly. So I start with my compound movements, and then after that, we go into our single leg movement, which would be split squats today. And then we end with the isolation exercise. So that is going to be hip abductions, but another good isolated glute exercise to finish with is glute kickbacks. Those are also super good as well. And sometimes I will start my glute day with hip abductions. I feel like it's a good way to open up the hips before you start with your compound movements, but I also like to end with them as well. And again, we're doing 4 sets, 8 to 10 reps, but on each leg. So you should be feeling the burn and super tired after split squats. But that's why we save the best for almost last. So just finish out strong. Trust me, your glutes will grow if you do these. So if you've been wanting to add them to your split, please do. Lastly, like I said, we are going to finish with hip abduction as our isolated glute movement. I stopped doing these for a while because I was convinced that they weren't really going to help me grow my glutes or doing anything. But for one, you need to be working your hip abductors. Like, if you're going to grow a bigger butt, you have to be working out your hips, your quads, your hammies. Like you have to work out everything if you're trying to grow a bigger butt. But the key, along with progressive overload and making sure to eat, is also, like I said, how you structure your workouts. So I make sure one of my leg days is specifically focused to glutes. And like I said, we are doing those single leg movements and those isolated glute movements. So as long as you're doing that, you should see some growth. And like I said, these are just super great to end with and also sometimes to start with. So try starting out with them too and see how you like that. But yeah, today we're finishing with hip abduction. So we started with hip thrusts into deadlifts, into lying leg curl, finished with split squats and hip abduction. If you want to make that just a little more simplified, I would do 2 compound movements, which would be hip thrusts, deadlifts, finish with your single leg movement, split squats, and then hip abduction. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this glute focused leg day. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, or if you try it. Also, you can find me on TikTok at JosieJadeXO or Instagram at JosieJadeFitness. Bye.